Hello, everyone. My name is Wendy Wilson. I'm the editor of alldigitocracy.org. I'm also a board member for the Online News Association and the National Association of Black Journalists. And I want to thank you all for coming to this Google Hangout. Today, it's all about the internships, and we've got two great guests who are going to talk about their experiences from both sides. First, we've got Wendy Wilson, who I consider the internship guru, and then we have Malika Andrews, who is a student out at the University of Portland. I had the pleasure of meeting her at the Online News Association conference last year. So I'm going to let them talk for just a few minutes, and then we're going to get right to the questions. And we'll start with Wendy first. Wendy, thanks so much for being on today.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the invitation. Again, I'm Wendy Wilson. I'm the former managing editor of Ebony magazine and Jet magazine, and the former news editor for Essence magazine. So I actually have done about 4 or 5, now that I think about it, internships in my career, and I also helped to develop the internship program both at Teen People magazine, which is another place that I used to work, and at Essence magazine. And so I have hired and even fired interns in my career, and I can hopefully tell you today what makes a great intern, what hopefully makes a great internship experience, and what people who are hiring interns are looking for.
Thanks, Wendy. Malika, your turn.
Well, hi, I'm Malika Andrews. Originally, I'm from Oakland, California, but now I'm a junior organizational communications major at the University of Portland. For the past year, I've served as the sports editor of UP's student-run media outlet, who will be transitioning. We have a weekly paper right now, and next year we're going to be transitioning to being digital only, which I'm really excited for. I also cover the Trailblazers for the Associated Press, and I was recently selected as one of 12 students to attend the Sports Journalism Institute this summer, which I'm really excited about, and my internship will be with the Denver Post. Last summer, I interned at Coin TV in Portland, and so I hope that I can be helpful today in talking a little bit about my internship experience, kind of how I got those, and how I put myself in a position to be successful in them.
Great. Thank you so much, ladies. So we're going to jump right into it. Now, I know you guys are going to answer these questions from your own perspective, but first, it seems obvious, but I'd really like to talk to you guys to answer the question why you think internships are so important to do, especially for journalism students.
Who do you want to take that first?
Oh, go ahead, Wendy.
Okay. I would say they're important, particularly for journalism students, because journalism is the type of business whether, you've got to figure out whether or not you can cut it or not. It's not cut for everybody. It's not made out for everybody. It's certainly not made out for the weak of heart. And so I always saw the internship as the first introduction, the first foray into the field. It allows people to figure out, is this really what I want to do? Is this really what I want to dedicate, a couple of years of my life to? It gives you the introduction to the industry. And so it's important to do an internship because you will figure out really quickly either, yes, I'm passionate about this, yes, I want to invest my time, my expertise, my knowledge base into doing this in the best possible way that I can, or perhaps this is not for me, this is not what I thought it was going to be, and I want to move on to something else. It really is sort of that time for you to figure out whether or not this is right for your particular lifestyle.
Yeah, I echo all that Wendy said, and then also, like, in today's day and age, I think having a bachelor's degree or having a basic degree just isn't enough. I'm in a unique position where there actually is no journalism school at the University of Portland, so I've had to kind of create those opportunities for myself, but you really don't know you can't learn it in a classroom. Journalism isn't a thing that can be learned through theory. It's something you have to go out and practice. And nowadays, there's also so many different kinds of journalism, digital, on camera, if you want to go into producing, different aspects of it. And like narrowing that focus down is also something that really can't be done in the classroom. So going out and interning at different places and building those networks, I think is super, super important. Because of the way the industry is going, and because, like Wendy said, not everyone can do it. So I think it's super important to go out and get that kind of outside experience in order to be able to determine if this is something that you want to dedicate a majority of your life to.
Malika, I want to ask you a follow-up question, because you said that your school doesn't have a communications program. A school of journalism.
Yeah,
so how did you end up there, and what have you been doing to kind of carve out your space in the journalism field?
Well, I ended up at the University of Portland. I came and visited, and I thought the campus was beautiful and the size was perfect for me. And then I sat in on a panel of communication students, and I looked at my mom and I told her, I was like, if I can walk away being as eloquently spoken as the students that I just heard, then this is the place I want to be. And so I committed that day. I'd taken a year off because I graduated high school in 3 years instead of 4, so a smaller school was something that I wanted. And I've only taken 2 formal journalism classes. I took news writing and reporting and opinion writing. Other than that, I kind of created my own journalism major, I guess. So taking things like public speaking, video production from all different classes from all different majors, and kind of combining those, as seeing it as a skill set that I needed as opposed to a major that I had, if that makes sense. So I applied to be a sports writer for the Beacon my first semester sophomore year, which is the university student-run media outlet, and we actually don't have a television station. So the Beacon is a print paper. I actually started our first weekly video series, so I anchor that. It's a sports series, and honestly, it's been great because not having a journalism program forces me to go out and find things in order to be a journalist. So Portland, there's not, especially in sports, there's like 15 main media members, I guess you could say, and I think I've asked each one of them to go to coffee with me, and things like that. So kind of like carving out those relationships and saying, hey, like, can I come shadow you at a game? Hey, can I do this? Hey, can I do that? And so my experience is much more hands-on than it is in the classroom, and I think that's what I needed anyways to build a skill set, as opposed to just label it a major and assume that'll get me to where I need to go.
Okay, thank you for that. We're going to talk a little bit about first internships. I remember mine was at a local television station in Washington, D.C. At the time, I was actually a broadcast major. That's what my degree is in. And I did that internship, and it was enough to kill, and I mean kill, any desire to be anywhere near or on television. So for me, that internship helped me decide what I didn't want to do. I wanted to ask you guys, what were your first internships? What did you learn from? How did you get them, and what did you learn from them?
Let's see. My first internship was during my sophomore year in college. I went to a professor who was I also didn't my undergrad don't have a journalism degree. My journalism training is from my graduate school's training, and so I was an English major. And again, just like Malika, had to figure out how to construct a journalism paradigm within the English department structure. So I went to my professor, who was in, I think, a writing seminar or something like that, and he and I were talking about my desire to be a journalist. And I knew that he had been a journalist, and so he said, I know someone at the local paper. Here's a name, here's a number. That's all he did. He didn't call her for me. He didn't make a connection. I called her. I got in there. I did the interview, and I got the internship. And so my first internship was at the Saratogian in Saratoga Springs. I went to Skidmore College in Saratoga Springs. And it was an eye-opening experience. I can say from that experience that I knew I didn't want to do newspaper. I knew I didn't want to be a newspaper journalist. It just didn't allow for the creativity that I was really interested in bringing to my writing. I spent a lot of time doing obits, and which is part of the internship training. Obits and sort of smaller pieces on local people. It just wasn't really kind of what I thought it was going to be. But what it did show me was structure. It did give me additional responsibility. It did tell me that while this particular foray is not what I was interested in, I was still passionate about writing. And so, still gave me, again, that sort of intro to figure out, okay, maybe not going right, but maybe going left is the right direction for me. And then after college, I got an internship during my graduate school study at George Magazine. And that, I think, was probably my favorite internship so far. That, I don't know if some people may be familiar with George. George is the former, I know you are, Renee, it's the former publication of John F. Kennedy Jr. And he started it in the, I think it was late 90s. I always tell people it's sort of like the first foray introduction between pop culture and politics. Before The Daily Show, there was George. Mm-hmm. And so I got there about 3 or 4 months after he passed. So it was a weird feeling. It was a weird place to be. A lot of people were sort of like, still reeling from his death and not really sure kind of what direction the publication was going in. And ultimately it did fold a couple months, I think a month or two after I finished my internship. But it gave me an understanding of American politics that I never had before. And it made me realize how interesting it could be, particularly when you dissect politics in a way that's palpable for everyday people, where it's not sort of very cerebral, but it can be fun, it can be exciting, it can be interesting once you make it, again, digestible for people to deliver, to ingest. So again, for the first time, I was calling people in Congress, I was calling people, and I felt part of a team. I felt part of a collective, and I was excited about that. So I think that was probably my favorite experience.
Let's see. My first internship was last summer at Coin TV. I think, like I mentioned before, and one of the anchors there just so happened to, as he liked to say a million years ago, worked for the Beacon, which is where I am now, and he had my position. He was a sports editor when he was an undergraduate 20-some years ago. And I found that out, and I emailed him and asked him if we could go get coffee sometime. And he said yes. And kind of separately, I saw the Coin TV post for an internship. And this was like late in the year. I'd been convinced that this was like maybe April, and I get out of school the first week in May, and I was convinced I wasn't going to have a summer internship. But because I had it in my head that like I needed to have a paid internship, that's what I needed. And so that really limited my view. And then Coin posted for a paid internship in Portland, which makes it even smaller. So then Coin posted for a sports intern. And it wasn't a paid position, but I applied. I'd actually emailed them before I saw the posting, and emailed them not just asking if there was an internship, but I emailed them some clips and my resume and said, if you ever need me, if you're ever interested, different things like that. And they emailed me back. And so I went down to the station and I met with the producer, and we had a pretty informal interview, and they hired me for the summer as one of 5 interns. There was 2 sports, 1 weather, and 2 news interns. And it was great. I worked it out so I worked there 3 days a week so that I could work another job on campus, just an administrative job 2 days a week, to make some extra money to pay my rent on the side. And I would go down to Coin, and it definitely wasn't the most competitive internships are formal internships where they sit down and have an orientation. It wasn't like that. I went out on a shoot the first day on one of the rivers in Portland, and we were doing a fishing segment, and I had to like sit in the boat, and I didn't really know what I was doing, but I just had to, I just got to watch. And I did a lot of watching at Coin, but I got to watch at the Trailblazers practice facility and watch at the Seahawks practice facility and like go to all these different places, and there were all these different people there for me to make connections with. And I think the coolest thing that I was able to do with my summer internship is all the interns got together and decided that we wanted to put on an internship newscast. So we asked to find a producer and find someone to run the teleprompter for us, and we each replaced the sportscaster and the newscaster in the 5:30 segments, and they gave us that tape. And I look back on it now, and it was not that awesome, but my ability to be on camera has gotten a lot better since then. But having that tape was the best thing I could have done, especially in an internship where you have to kind of, again, carve your own path because they let you loose a little bit more. That was something that was super important to get. And it was great to get, you know, everyone involved. You know, the actual anchors were sitting in the production room, like watching us do it and giving us tips and all these different things. And that was a lot of fun. So I think that was the most important thing I did at Coin for myself, especially because a lot of the other stuff was logging film, doing different things like that, doing the behind the scenes stuff. And I think having that on camera experience really helped me, and meeting all those different people helped me then when I started with AP. They all remembered me because I had introduced myself when I had the opportunity to go to the different facilities and things like that. Even though I wasn't holding the camera or in front of the camera, I was kind of just off to the side carrying the camera bag. I took the initiative to introduce myself, and that went a huge long way, and people were excited for me when I ended up getting my foot in the door as a journalist, and not just the intern. So that was my first internship.
Malika, I wish you could have seen Wendy and I's face. Everything you're saying, we're sitting here nodding and we're smiling. Because Wendy will tell you. Go ahead, Wendy. Just go ahead and say it.
Absolutely. Taking the initiative is vital. It's so important, and it separates you from the rest of everybody else, right? So the people who actually take initiative, and it could be something as small as saying, "Hi, my name is there anything I can do to help you?" Mm-hmm. That one thing separates you from everyone else, right? Because when you're working in a staff or a formals team, especially editors, writers, producers, you're so inundated with the work that you oftentimes don't remember, oh, you know, I've got to, you know, train this person or help this person or figure out, okay, what do I have to give her? A lot of times if you just come and say, what can I help you with? It's such a relief that it makes us remember you. It makes us say, oh, this one is smart. This one wants to be a part of the team. This one is willing to work, as opposed to you waiting for me to give you a job to do.
Yeah, I agree with Wendy. I mean, I know during my internships, my thing was always food. Journalists are always hungry in a newsroom, and they very rarely get home-cooked meals. I happen to be a really good cook, and that summer at the TV station, I had grown my own garden, and part of that was tomatoes. So I was making lasagnas for people, little mini lasagnas, and I'd bring them in, and that was my in. I mean, I got to go out on shoots. I got to do my own little stand-up reel because I was the girl who would always help out and who had the good food for them. So, you know, whatever works, right?
Yeah.
I have a great example of that. When Michael Jackson passed away, I was working with Essence.com at the time, and we had 2 interns who were on our staff helping us. I think that it was during the summer, if I remember correctly, or maybe the spring. And I remember the lady and saying, you know, can you do some reporting? We're going to go out on the street and get some just man on the street, woman on the street reaction. And she was like, it's 5:15. I'm supposed to leave at 5:30.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, not a problem. You go ahead and do you. Went to the other girl. She said, let's go. She and I went out to Times Square on the street, did a bunch of reporting, came back, she got a byline. There lies the difference.
Yeah, I remember the draft, so in this, especially for sports in the summer, is kind of a difficult time because there are, like, sports aren't in season. A lot of them, a lot of the major sports aren't in season. So the draft for the NBA was a big deal, and it was a day, like I said, because I only worked 3 days a week, that I actually wasn't working, and so I asked them if I could come in because, like, I just really wanted to see this, and it meant spending 6 hours in the practice facility and not going to work that day. But I met the general manager of the Trailblazers, and now he remembers me, and now, like, different things like that. So again, like, going that extra, like, I can't stress enough how much the little above and beyond makes all the difference.
Yes. Absolutely.
I mean, that's the perfect segue to my next question. I mean, we all know that the best internships are highly competitive. And first, Wendy, I want to ask you, when you're looking at internship candidates, what are some of the things that you see in applications that help them stand out, that make you say, I either at least want to give this person an interview or I want to actually hire this person?
A couple of things that stand out in particular. Clips. Because I'm dealing with print publications, clips are really important, and yes, I do read them. I want to see a varied kind of amalgamation of things. I want to see Q&As. I want to see things about culture, sports, health, whatever. I want to see a diversity in your clips. Sorry if you hear banging. There's construction outside my window. I apologize for that.
I'll have somebody working on a roof next door, so we're good.
Okay. So clips are really important. I have received things like poetry. Those are not clips. I have received pieces of fiction. Those are not clips. So immediately I actually throw those away. Those applications just go in the garbage because you're not ready. You must, when I was at Essence, when I was at Ebony, you must come ready. This is not your, sorry to say, your local sort of, rudimentary starting out. This is, publications that are reaching millions of people. And so, yeah, they're pretty coveted. And I would really kind of have to be very discerning in the applications that I would say, okay, let's take this to the next step. Clips are huge. The next thing I would look for is whether or not the person has leadership experience. Leadership can be anything. It could be that you're running the school paper, or it could be that you're a part of the student government. It could be that you have coordinated a community service action within your college town, or it could be that you have led rallies, or it could be that you have started your own blog, or it could be a plethora of things. But I want to see that you've taken the lead on something. It means that you have a passion, that you're willing to work for something without being paid to do it. Leadership skills are really important. Also shows that you're taking yourself seriously, you're building your resume, you know that the ultimate goal after your 4 years is to get into a professional arena, so you're trying to take the steps to go further. So leadership positions are really important to me. Another thing that I look for that most people may even find surprising, I want to know that you have hobbies. I want to know that you're not always in the library, that you're not always with your nose in the books. If you don't know what's going on in the world, and if you don't take time to enjoy life, you're not going to be enjoyable to work with. Think about that. People need to decompress. You need to know how to have an enjoyable experience. And so I want to see people who, they run for, they're just for fun, or they're part of a Zumba, or whatever the case may be, but they have an outlet, right? You want to make sure that you're not just sort of focused in one direction without seeing the bigger picture. So those are 3 things off the top of my head.
Wow. Malika, I wanted to ask you, kind of twisting the question a little, what do you, for your Sports Journal Institute application, what were some of the things that you put on your application that you think helped them choose you as one of the lucky 12?
Well, I think variety of clips was one thing. They asked us for 5 to 7, and I think I did even though it's titled the Sports Journalism Institute, I included 2 news stories and 1 video with myself on camera, and then the rest were sports stories. But I did 1 gamer, 2 columns, and 3 features, I think, for something like that for my sports story. So there was like a little bit of a variety there. So I think that was one of them. And then the subjects of my stories, I really tried to be like, okay, I already have 2 basketball clips, so I also want to have volleyball or different things like that. And then with SJI, they also have you write a 500-word essay on why you think that what can the Sports Journalism Institute do for you. And I kind of took a Wendy route on this, and I talked about Robin Roberts in my essay, and she's one of the hosts of Good Morning America, but she started on ESPN. And what I did for my framework was, like, I started saying, like, basically, I've always loved sports, so sports is also a hobby of mine, and I grew up on them. But there weren't a lot of people covering the sports that I loved that looked like me. And then I saw Robin Roberts, and her line is, go on with your bad self. And I think the Sports Journalism Institute will help me go on with my bad self. And I truly believe that. And like, I kind of tied that in throughout my essay. And another one of Robin's, she wrote a book, Rules to Live By. So reading is another, even though I didn't say it, it's like another thing I like to do. And so I talked a little bit about her book and how one of the rules is, never play the race, gender, or any other card. And I think going to the Sports Journalism Institute, I told them, would help people see me for my skills first, rather than what I look like, but rather than a diversity statistic. And I think approaching that essay from that standpoint, as opposed to rigidly, this is what I need to do, these are my accomplishments. I only had like 2 sentences about my accomplishments, and it wasn't in detail. It was more, since I've been at the paper, I've been able to do X, Y, Z. And that was really the only one that stated, like, specifically, these are my accomplishments, because I don't think that's as important as your overarching vision. It shows that you're, I don't like to say driven. I think driven is what Wendy's talking about on a resume, where you have your nose in the books. I like to say relentless. Relentless means you're chasing things. You are going for it. So I think that was something that helped me to stand out. And then also, I think it's important people know that I didn't get into the Sports Journalism Institute the first time that I applied. But Greg Lee emailed me and said he was impressed by my application. And so you bet I sent him Merry Christmas emails, Happy New Year emails. I met this one guy that said he knew you emails. And then also I looked up who got some of the internships through SJI that I wanted. And I sent them emails, and we've become friends because they're my peers, and they are who I will be in the industry with, because we'll be moving up through, like, the people that are 1 or 2 years older than me. We're going to be in it at the same time, kind of a thing. So I asked them what they did. I've become really good friends with one of the interns from last year, and he read my application for me and was like, hey, Greg, like, he really will like this, or he's not, maybe you should chill out on that a little bit. And I think that also helped me to get to know someone who knew the application. And it was great because I didn't turn in my application until the day before it was due, and Greg emailed me and was like, hey, like, I haven't seen your application yet. So having that previous relationship with him also really helped, and that relationship started through SJI and continued with my happy birthday, happy new year, happy holiday emails that I sent him. So I think that's how I did it, but I didn't get in the first time I applied last year.
Again, Wendy and I are just sitting there like those bobblehead dolls, just everything that you're saying. So, I mean, I think it's good that both of you were on, but Malika, especially you, because I'm not going to say it about Wendy, but I sometimes I feel like grandma, and people kind of tune out. But when they see someone like you that looks like them, that has these experiences, I'm hoping that between you and Wendy, people will listen. Malika, one of the things that you talked about was when you had your internship at Coin, you were talking about it wasn't a paid internship. And Wendy, I'm going to ask you about this too. I hear a lot of students who talk about they don't do internships because they're not paid. So I'd like to get you guys' thoughts on paid versus unpaid internships? And, obviously, Malika, you took one, but Wendy, your thoughts about that too?
I did both paid and unpaid internships. So when I was in grad school, I had my final semester. I applied to a couple of different internships and happened to get the internship at George, which was not paid, but I happened at the same time to get an internship at InStyle magazine, which was paid. And really kind of sat and struggled with, I had an interest in news and politics, but I also had an interest in fashion and beauty. And so do I take the non-paid or do I take the paid? And I sat down with a professor, my advisor at NYU, and he said to me, well, why do you have to choose? And I said, you know what, you're right. Why do I have to choose? I did both. Now, I don't advise doing 2 internships at once. It was fun noodles. It was crazy. But you always work hardest for what you want, right? So I did my internship at InStyle Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I did my internship at George Tuesdays and Thursdays. I had class from 6 to 9 on Thursdays, and I did my reporting on the weekends. Full schedule. Full and crazy schedule. But I survived. And it was really grueling, but it was very beneficial. I would say to people who question internships that are quote-unquote free. Now, what does that really mean? When you're doing an internship for quote-unquote free, it really means you're doing it for credit. Mm-hmm. So technically, it's not like you're not getting anything back. You know what I'm saying? You are getting school credit for this. You are getting the experience. And sometimes, it's hard to say this, but sometimes it means more than a paycheck. If you're getting the opportunity to meet certain people, to be in certain circles, to experience certain things, sometimes that could be worth more than gold because it will lead you to where you need to be. When you are early on in your career as well, the struggle is going to happen. Unless you're, one of Denzel Washington's children, who you're independently wealthy, the struggle is going to happen. Let it happen. You will survive it. The money will come. In the beginning, let the struggle happen. Do the internship for free. Do it for college credit. Get the experience that you need. And if you have to take a side job at a restaurant or in retail or whatever, so be it. It's not forever. Do it for a year, do it for 6 months. It's not forever. Take the experience for what it is. With that, though, I will say there is a caveat. There's an asterisk on that. There are several instances where companies have taken advantage of students who are doing internships for free. So with that, I would say make sure that you are getting college credit. Make sure that your university or your college understands the work that you are doing. Make sure your internship coordinator at your school is in touch with your supervisor manager at your outlet, your media outlet. We want to make sure everything is above board because you don't want to get in a situation where, like some people have, you end up suing an institution because you feel taken advantage of.
Yep.
Well, let's see. I took an unpaid internship, like I said, last summer. And I did work a side job, and they were more, I think I was lucky that they were more flexible with me. I think because it was unpaid, they understood that when I said, like, I'm going to be there 3 days a week, because I understand the having to work to support yourself. You got to pay your rent. I earned college credit for the internship that I took. I, in hindsight, kind of wish that I had tailored the course that I took to, because it's kind of I know it's case to case with different schools, but keep in mind a lot of the times if you're doing a summer internship unpaid, you're going to have to pay to be enrolled in classes for the summer. So in a sense, that means you are paying to be an intern. And I had to do that. I had to pay for those 3 credits that I had to take. So that's one advantage of doing unpaid internships strategically in the fall or the spring when you're already going to be enrolled in classes, so you don't have to pay an enrollment fee. But again, that's getting into the weeds a little bit. But I took an unpaid internship for the summer, and I was actually offered another unpaid internship in the fall. And I was in conversation with a local newspaper, because I did TV for the summer, about taking that internship, and I'd almost committed, actually. Like, they had sent me the paperwork when AP called and asked if I wanted to go work for them being paid. And in my mind, I knew that the right thing to do for me at the time was going to be to take the paid, it's not really an internship with AP. I basically freelance for AP. But I knew that was going to be the right thing for me to do after I'd spent a summer being unpaid. But I told the Tribune that. I called them and I said, hey, this is an opportunity that I can't turn down. And I hope you understand. And we've kept in contact, and the sports writers for the Tribune now know me, and we have a great relationship. But like, I think it was important that I called them and told them, because they had sent me the paperwork. We had, I'd gone over to the Tribune and talked about going and interning there for free. So I think it's just knowing your limits, I guess, and also what you want to get out of an unpaid internship, especially because you can't at the end chalk it up to the money. So for me, I was going to get an on-camera reel, because I wasn't going to get that last year, at least, on campus. That's something I couldn't get on campus. So I was like, all right, what can I get out of this internship that I won't be able to otherwise? And so that, for me, made it worth it. Those 2 tapes that I got made it worth it. And the people that I met and the connections that I made. But you kind of just have to, I think, just decide for yourself. Like, I knew I couldn't take 2 back-to-back. And for me, it ended up working out. But you just kind of have to assess and see if you're in a situation, like, case to case. But don't expect your first internship to be paid. And internships also, like, it's not just the formal program that someone posts online. You kind of have to get creative, especially with your first ones, because the more competitive ones expect you to already have internships. And if you don't, I would venture to say, Wendy probably knows better, those are also the applications that you're going to toss, because it's a requirement on, like, one of the bullet points on a lot of organizations' websites or whatever is previous internships required. And if you don't have that, so your first one, a lot of times you're going to have to get creative, like, hey, can I do this? Can I do that? Because so many now, especially the more competitive ones, hope that you would have a previous internship. And so it's kind of like the chicken and the egg. Everyone wants you to already have one, but you need to get one in order to have an internship. So the loophole in that is making your own. Like, hey, I know you haven't posted an internship, but I'm willing to do this, 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 and this. Can we work it out? So that's kind of the balance there, I think.
And both of you touched on something that's near and dear to my heart, and I know it's near and dear to Wendy's heart too, the importance of networking. I mean, even now in my career, my network has saved me for so many times. But for Malika, first, I want to ask you if you could give some tips to students on how to properly develop and cultivate and tend to your networks.
Well, there's the phrase, ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. And I think that works with your first impressions with building your network. My little sister she's 3 years younger than me, and she is studying journalism, broadcast journalism at Gonzaga, and she's a freshman, and so of course I'm riding her a little bit harder to start her internship process. And she asked me the other day, like, should I just email these people and ask about internships? And I said, no, you email them and you ask them to go sit down face-to-face time with coffee, or if it's people in the Bay Area and you're in Washington, you ask for a time to talk on the phone and ask them about themselves first. And then later on, they'll probably ask you, especially those that care to mentor you, will ask you about your summer plans or different things like that, or if they have any advice for you. But the first thing you ask people usually shouldn't be, hey, can you help me out with this? In the cases of like you apply for an internship and you don't get it and you stay in contact with people, I think that's a little bit different. But I think it's super important to, remember that it's not all about you, and also that your network will get you places. So how I got my position with AP is one of the 2 journalism classes I took. The professor had a guest speaker, and she was the only AP sports writer in the state. And I asked her if she wanted to get lunch sometime, and we got lunch sometime. And then I asked her if I could job shadow. I texted her and asked her if I could job shadow her at a football game, because we don't have football, and I really wanted to have that in my toolbox. And she said okay. And then we kind of that never ended up happening. So I texted her again because she didn't let me know about football dates. I said, hey, like I'm still really interested in that football game if you ever want. And she's like, actually, I have a better idea. How would you like to write for AP? And I stopped my treadmill and I was like, oh yeah, like for sure. So that's kind of how that happened. So again, like you never really know who can help you out, and then also like it's a relationship. It's not just them giving you something, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Wendy?
Let me see. Networking, I think that a lot of students perhaps don't realize that they already are building their networks. Your professors, local talent, your professors know a lot of people. Sometimes adjuncts especially are actually working in the fields. So reach out to the people that you already know. I know a lot of students have come to me and said, well, I don't have a network. Yeah, you do. You actually already are building your sort of quote unquote, Rolodex of people that you know. And just like Malika said, it's so important to cultivate those relationships and to go to those people not when you need something, but to develop, to almost like date before you get married. Think of it that way. You don't just go on the first date and say, here's a ring. Let's get to know each other a little bit before you ask me what I can do for you. I think it's really important for people to also be aware that don't get discouraged. Editors, writers, producers, on-air talent, people are really busy. And so if you don't hear back from someone right away, if you only get a phone call as opposed to a sit down, just remember that don't take it personally. And if you don't get a reply from the person, also I would follow up very sort of not in a way that's pushy, but in a way that's just saying, hey, just wanted to reach out again and seeing if there's an opportunity. Change it up a little bit. Maybe the first time you ask them if you could do a lunch or a coffee, change it up and say, hey, would you like to do a Skype session or FaceTime session or Google Hangout? That way it's not taking away from their having to come anywhere or do anything. Do you have 15 minutes on the phone for me? Can I stop by? That way you're going to them, not them coming to you. Whatever makes it more convenient for the person. One thing that Malika said that really stood out to me is when you spoke to Greg Lee, and you followed up with those Happy New Year, Merry Christmas, you're a journalist, do a little legwork. Find out where is Greg from. Greg is from New Orleans, isn't he? Well, happy Mardi Gras. Let me send you some beads. Whatever the case may be. Find out a little bit about the person you want to know. Find out something particularly personal about them, and then follow up with some sort of token or a card, or if you know that I'm really into tennis, you might send me, hey, are you going to the U.S. Open? Whatever. Find out. It will make you stand out. And really about internships and getting that entry-level position is anything that's going to make you stand out from the rest of the crowd. So those little touches. And again, doesn't have to be expensive, doesn't have to be time consuming. The little touches make a big difference. So I think that's how you start to network. And don't be afraid to actually just go up to people and say, hi, my name is, right, the old Slim Shady way.
That's how I met Malika. She came right up at a reception. So
absolutely.
So that, Wendy, I'm going to ask you a question. As someone that has hired a lot of interns and actually crafted internships programs, what do you think students need to do, or what do you think students should walk away with when they finish their internships? And I know I'm your magazine, so let's just focus on that, because I think the advice is just the same. But I hear so many students say, well, I did a whole semester and I don't have any clips or anything. So what do you think students should have when that internship ends?
I think students should have clips, absolutely, when the internship ends. If you don't have any clips, you have to ask yourself why, right? Did I ask? Did I put myself out there and say, hey, do you need help? You know, can I write something for you? When will I have the opportunity to write something? Or can I contribute reporting? Maybe you can get a reporting credit, which is just as valuable, can be just as valuable as a clip. I think you want to walk away from an internship with a better understanding of whether or not this is for you. Yes, I'm still passionate about this, or, you know, I did an internship in a PR office once, and I realized that selling an idea is not what I like to do. I like to give facts and let people come up with their own opinion. So that's what I took away from that experience, working in PR sort of as an arm's length away from journalists. I realized, no, I wanted to be where the journalists were. But I needed to try that to really figure out, is PR for me or not? So you, I think, will come away with that sort of idea of, is this what I want to do? Lastly, I think you should leave an internship with really solid connections. I used to tell people at Essence all the time, yes, you're working at Essence, but our umbrella company is Time Incorporated, which also publishes Time Magazine, InStyle, People Magazine, Real Simple. So there are Sports Illustrated. There are a plethora of other options. Please go out and meet people. You know, there was a central cafeteria. So when you go to the cafeteria, you know, if you see someone that you recognize, or you see, you overhear a conversation about someone talking about working at Sports Illustrated, why not tap them on the shoulder and say, hey, I'm an intern at Essence. You know, I would love to see if I could just pick your brain a little bit. That's how you're building your network. Now, the internship at Essence was very formalized. So we had opportunities where people would, from various interns from various publications, would get together. So that was very easy for them to kind of have a person that they already knew at that publication. Well, if you have another intern friend who is working at Sports Illustrated and you're working at Essence, tell your friend, you know, ask your supervisor, yes, may I leave 5 minutes early? May I leave 10 minutes early? 9 times out of 10, it's no problem. Explain why. I want to go to my friend's internship at Sports Illustrated and see if I can meet a couple people there. That's fine. You're building your network. So you should walk away having, I would say, 2, 3 people that you know are sort of in your pocket that you can go to after your internship, that you can stay in touch with. The people who have, in my opinion, gone on from internship to career success are those who stay in touch with the people who kind of they worked with while they were an intern. So that's really important. Once you go back to school, don't forget these folks. Keep the lines of communication open.
Mm-hmm. One of the questions that I hear all the time, and it's actually one of the questions that have just been submitted, is how do you find internships? And I mean, I know how I did it. I'm aging myself, but there was no internet back in the day when I was starting. So, you know, you did your research, but I don't the question is interesting to me. So Malika, I wanted to ask you, how do you find the internships that you're interested in? What resources do you use?
It's I think it might be too simple to say, but ask. Um, so uh, I didn't know what the Sports Journalism Institute was 3 years ago when I was a freshman, and I worked an administrative job in the administrative building on campus, and someone who I worked with knew a guy who was friends with a guy who worked for Sports Illustrated, and I got coffee with the guy who worked for Sports Illustrated, and
Oh, I think she's frozen.
Uh-oh. I thought it was me for a second.
Nope. Okay, well, I'll wait for her to come back, and I'll just ask you kind of the same question. If students are asking you, where are the internships, what do you tell them?
I tell them, I think, Malika has a good point. Ask around. I got a lot of my internships actually through being in grad school, and just, professors would send things out all the time saying, well, I heard this person is looking for this or this person is looking for that. I always tell students, you are paying to be at the institution that you are learning at. Use every resource at your collegiate institution. Most places have a career services office. Use it. These people are getting paid for a reason. They're getting paid to help you. Go to career services, career development, whatever they call it. Sit down with some of the office managers or the people there who are there to help you, and figure out. There she goes. She's back. Figure out what you're looking for. Give them some specifics so that, because they're getting an influx of different opportunities coming through, and give them some specifics on what you're looking for, and then 9 times out of 10 they'll be able to give you some options. It's there. The information is there. You simply have to go into the office and get it. It's not. I don't understand when people say I don't know where to go. It's on your campus.
I know it boggles my mind, but it was a question.
Okay, so if you don't have a career services department at your school, then do you have a local television station? Do you have a local newspaper? Do you have a local, is there a website that you really love? Find out who runs what and contact the person. My internship at George, I got because I love the magazine. I found out because I'm a journalist who the contact person was. I found out who, not the editor-in-chief, but who the editorial assistant was. Right? Person right from the bottom. And I contacted her. And I said, I'm interested in doing an internship at George. I don't know if you guys do internships. I don't know if you have anything available, but I want to be there. And it was that young lady who brought me in to meet with the right people. And in that meeting, I ended up having a meeting with the editor-in-chief as well. So you don't want to start with the editor-in-chief, because that person is 9 times out of 10 not the person who's going to be hiring you. Figure out who the hiring manager is going to be. It's either deputy editor, managing editor, editorial assistant, associate editor. Think about it that way and contact those people. And I would contact them by saying, if you are not the appropriate person, can you please tell me who is?
Mm-hmm. Malika, thank you. I'm glad you're back. So go ahead and you can continue what you were saying.
I mean, Wendy said it all. I mean, just ask. I mean, someone told me, like, who knew someone, who knew someone, who knew someone, and I found that third person down the line and gave him a phone call and just asked. I asked Coin before their internship was posted. And then also, thinking outside of the box of what an internship is, or if they don't list it, doesn't mean they don't have it or are not open to one. So you'll never know unless you ask. So might as well find that person that Wendy was talking about and go and ask them. And if they say no, don't cut. It's not their fault they don't have an internship or they aren't in a place where they have a position for you. You don't want to cut that person off like, oh, I can't use you, I'm done with you, kind of a thing. oh, tell me about what you do. And then they may remember you, and they also may not, but chances are they will. And so, again, like keeping those relationships open and asking other people, I think is huge. And then again, not defining internships in such limited terms, going on that job shadow and meeting those other people, and then that may turn into something. So, yeah.
Wendy, I wanted to ask you, I know you've seen more than your fair share of applications. Can you give me an example of an application that was just so bad it made your head hurt, and then an example of an application that was so good you actually started crying at your desk?
Okay, let's see. Bad applications are usually the ones that, again, like I said before, the clips are prose or pieces of fiction or poetry, which is, I don't want to read your poetry. I really don't. I'm sure it's very lovely, but that's not what we do. That's not what I do. Applications that are not complete, where people didn't take the time to actually read the specifications. If we ask for, 4 clips and you're sending me 2, we ask for 4 clips and you're sending me 6. If I say write a 200-word essay or statement on X, Y, and Z, and you're giving me 1,000 words, just follow the rules. It's really not that hard to do. What also kind of is a thing that kind of makes me do a turned up lip is when I get, if I get a recommendation, and I don't think this has ever happened on paper. It's happened verbally. But if I get a recommendation from a parent, there's a certain, like, I've had people say, my son would love an internship at Ebony, Essence, whatever the case may be. And I'm just like, well, have them reach out to me. You reaching out to me leaves a little cloud around the situation. You know what I mean? It doesn't necessarily turn me off all the way, because I understand parents want the best for their kids. But at some point, you got to let Johnny or Jane do for themselves. And I prefer to hear from Johnny and Jane and not from you. So if you know me and you have my contact information, you're lucky enough to have that, you have Johnny or Jane contact me. I don't want to hear from the parent. That sort of thing. So those kind of things, I'm sort of like, I don't really want to pursue that. The people who have been stellar are people who simply follow the rules, who comply to whatever the application is asking for, who give me clips that actually make sense, whether it's, if online stuff or print stuff, even if it's a blog. Which, back in the day, I used to kind of be like, I don't want to, because blogs tend to be mostly opinion pieces, mostly someone's, personal journaling. But some blogs are actually really smart and really precise and sort of dealing with the expertise. So, for instance, I would have to hire interns for the fashion and beauty department at Essence. And so I remember hiring a young lady who had a beauty blog. And her beauty blog was really good, right? So she wasn't just writing about I love makeup and, that sort of thing. She was actually taking products, testing them out, and talking about whether or not they were good or bad for her African-American skin type, her hair type, whatever the case may be, why she liked it, why she didn't, new brands that catered to Black women. That's what I mean by smart as opposed to personal.
Yeah.
So that's why I ended up hiring her, because I figured beauty, again, someone who has, I wanted to be fashion and beauty. I was interning at InStyle, so I get it. You have to be passionate about it. Fashion and beauty are 2 categories you have to be passionate about, particularly at women's magazines and women's media outlets, because it's so grinding and because it's so competitive. So those are the things I look for, people who have the passion. The passion will come out. It will come out in your reel, it will come out in your blog, and it will come out in your writing. And I can discern it. I've been in the game long enough where I can see passion, or I can see sort of just doing it to do it.
Okay. Well, I can't believe how quickly this has gone by. So I've got one last question, and I'm going to ask you both to give our students one solid piece of advice when it comes to going after an internship.
I'm going to say think about your dream job. Think about where you want to be in your career. And again, this is sort of not probably the advice you would hear most people say. Don't reach for that place as your first choice. Reach for the low-hanging fruit first before you reach for the high stars, if that makes sense. Get your feet wet. Get the experience locally. Get the experience at your school. Get the experience in your community. Get ready. Be prepared so that when you do reach for the higher fruit, the higher star, you stand out, you're ready, you're prepared, you're hireable. Does that make sense?
Perfect.
Yeah, because I think most people will be like, if you have an opportunity to go for your dream job, go for it. Not if you're not ready, because you won't get it and you'll only get disappointed. Think realistically. Go for the opportunity that is going to get your feet wet first, prepare you for greatness, and then go for greatness. So that would be, I think, my last piece of advice.
Malika?
I'm gonna go with a simple, but a lot of people, it's kind of like a twofold to a one answer. A lot of people, the first thing they'll tell me, especially as a young person wanting to get into this industry, like, I ask them for their advice, and they tell me, don't do it, don't go into this industry. And I say, well, I'm going to, so what's your next piece of advice? So respectfully and assertively, don't take no for an answer, but with that, walk the walk, don't talk about it. So go put your head down, do the work, and I promise you'll pop out. I'm still in the weeds of it, but this past year has been amazing because I got into SJI. I have won a national award for some of my work, things like that, but you don't get there without the night spent crying in the newsroom. And I promise, you will come out on the other side of it if you listen to the people that have your best interest in mind. And then also the people that don't, you have to be able to tune that out too, which circles back to what Wendy was saying, that this isn't for everybody, because a lot of people are going to try to tell you that you can't or you shouldn't. And then there are the people like Benet and Wendy who have become mentors to me that'll pull you up and say, yeah, actually you should, and this is all the things you're doing really well. So I think remembering that when you're going out on your internships, when you're getting no's, because although I got into SJI, I didn't get some of the other internships I applied for this summer. So when people are telling you no, seek out those with more experience to tell you why you should and can continue even when you don't feel like it, because your voice does have a place. And when you hear that the sky is falling in the industry, don't necessarily always believe that. Take that with a grain of salt and carve your own path in that.
Well, thank you both for doing this. I think this has been very helpful. I hope that the students get a lot out of this, and I know you both are very busy, so I greatly appreciate you taking the time.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you, Benet. Thank you, Malika.
Thanks, Wendy.